are here and we are ready to go. And I am again thanking you that have come from all over the country. You know, one thing I notice is that the folk from out of town are the ones that come to the early session. Y'all, I gotta give them when they show up. But I'm very happy to see so many, and I know Ben is going to be glad. A lot of people here from Oakland, Reverend Haynes and them. But we're going to hear a speaker this morning that I admire and respect, and then we'll follow it up immediately with the gun violence panel. We have a little brother from Brooklyn that we run into every once in a while. That's going to help us with that. You're just a little guy with a little apartment down in Fort Greene, man. You tell everybody you own the whole building, but you just got Brand Jones has distinguished himself in this country and in our community for a long time. Even though he is young in age, he has a long track record in terms of his activism, in terms of his using mass media to educate, and one of the pioneers in using social media and the internet to organize. And I called him and said that being that this is our first convention since the election of Trump, that it would mean a lot to us if he shared his overview with us as we shape and frame National Action Network's agenda going forward. And, you know, I've only come down to do 2 other introductions of speakers, and that was Eric Holder, and just because that's what my respect is for him. He's Yale educated, but Oakland grounded. So for you Bushies, he's Ivy League. For y'all grassroots folk, he's Oakland scholar. Basketball team, so he's been able to bridge the gap. And as one who has traveled the activist road a long time, it's the balance that gets stuff done. You got to know how to go to the line, but don't forget you're fighting on behalf of getting something done. Because there's a difference between activism and exhibitionism. Some folks just exhibitionists want to show they behind and move us forward. He has the perfect balance. May we hear from the host of Messy Truth on CNN. He's also the president and co-founder of Dreams Corp. And his current initiatives include Yes We Code and Green for All. My friend and brother and yours, Van Jones.
Well, I'll tell you, that's you work your whole life to get something like that from someone like Reverend Sharpie. Please give him a round of applause. And I say this not to ingratiate myself, but we literally studied everything that you did dealing with racial violence here on the East Coast, and just literally almost photocopied it for the campaigns that we ran in Oakland and met with great success. And sometimes when you're fighting in a local struggle, you don't know you're inspiring people all around the world. Sharpton has done that. This organization has done that. And it's never been more needed. So I'm not going to do no baby food talk. This is a PhD level problem. We need to have a PhD level discussion. They call it the resistance. It's bigger than that. This is a pro-democracy movement, and it is the most recent iteration and incarnation of a pro-democracy movement. But this one is for all the marbles. Trump is much more dangerous, I think, than even the most hysterical liberal thought in November and October. And so therefore what we do matters much, much more. Let me just say, I was born in 1968, so I'm not as young as I look on TV. Makeup makes a difference. I was born in 68. That was the year they shot Bobby Kennedy. That was the year they killed Dr. King. Yes. That's the year that they beat a bunch of students because they wanted peace. That's the year they tried to wipe out hope in America. But there was an idea that started in 68 that then got bigger in 88 and then took over the government in 2008. And it will now be in our hands in 2018. That idea was Dr. King's Poor People's Campaign. In 68, that idea was so small and so radical and so bizarre. The idea that you could have African Americans and Mexican Americans and Appalachians and Native Americans all come together for anything was such a bizarre idea that even Dr. King's lieutenants didn't understand it. Even his lieutenants argued against it and said, we should be fighting for civil rights for our folk. What do we have to listen to Mexicans for? His closest lieutenants didn't understand it. But by 1988, 20 years later, that idea was at the heart of something called the Rainbow Coalition. People act like the first African American to run for office talking about hope was Barack Obama. But in 88, Reverend Jackson was talking about keep hope alive. Keep hope alive in 88. And in 88, that movement, which was just in the mind of Dr. King 20 years earlier, almost took over the Democratic Party. And in fact, they had to bring out a Jesse Jackson killer named Bill Clinton to stop all that foolishness, to prevent the Rainbow Coalition from becoming the Democratic Party. And then 40 years after Dr. King's death, after 40 years in the wilderness from Dr. King's death, a young man named Barack Obama started talking about hope. But what was his formula for power? It was to take African Americans and Latinos and Native Americans and students and labor and put them together. And that little germ of an idea in 68 by 1940 took over America's government. That's the trajectory that we're on. The problem is that we didn't evaluate the outcome. It turns out that once we got there, we had the White House, we had the House of Representatives, with Pelosi running the House, she's no pushover. We had 60 votes in the Senate, and we permitted to get our butt kicked. Because what we didn't understand then and must understand now is that power is not just in one place. There are 4 power centers in the country. Talk about it. Not one.
Teach.
It's not just Washington, D.C. Yes, that's the seat of the democracy. But right here in New York City, you have Wall Street. The seat of the plutocracy. The rule of the rich. And then you can get in a plane and fly across the Silicone Valley. We like to pretend that the lawmakers are writing the future in law in D.C. But those app developers are writing the future in computer code. They're updating your phones while you're sitting here. The technocracy, another center of power. And then you can go down to Hollywood, where we can always be the stars but never own the studio.
Exactly.
What do these other 3 centers of power have in common? You have the democracy. Listen, Barack Obama had the full power in his hands. But you have the plutocracy, the technocracy, and the mediaocracy. See what I did there? 3 different centers of capital, 3 different centers of money that we didn't spend 40 years strategizing against. We didn't spend 40 years getting expertise in. We didn't spend 40 years infiltrating. And so then even when we won, too often we lost. And now, we're faced with a catastrophe. Even where we played, we've now been Trump. And so the question is, how do you turn that kind of a breakdown into a breakthrough? You have to be efficient. You have to be smart. You have to be clinical and analytical. And that's why I'm proud to be a part of something called Green for All. When I say green, I don't just mean money green. How do you solve in our community at this point the economic challenge? Lack of jobs, lack of contracts, lack of opportunity. How do you solve the criminal justice challenge? Too many of our kids go into jail, too few of them going to college. How do you solve the environmental crisis? In Oakland, when they put up the metal detectors in our schools, kids walk through and the metal detectors go off. Everybody thinks that they have a gun. They have a knife. No, they have asthma inhalers. They have asthma inhalers. Because we live in a cancer cluster, asthma cluster. We always are positioned near the most toxic, most polluted places with the most lead and have the most problems. But then we say environmentalism is for white folk. As if there is some record that would suggest that white people and Europeans care about the earth and Africans don't. That Europeans care about the earth and Native Americans don't. That Europeans care about the earth and Asians don't. There's no record. In fact, your great-grandmother was one of the most earth-honoring people in the history of the world. In fact, it was your great-grandmother who stood up to the colonizers. Not just on the basis of stolen labor, but on the basis of stolen land. It was your great-grandmother who said, y'all can't cut down all these trees are sacred. Y'all can't dam up these rivers all throughout Africa and name it. These rivers are sacred. And it was the colonizer that told your great-grandmother that she was a heathen, worshiping rocks and stones, and didn't understand that this is just timber. Oh, I can put a price tag on these trees and this river. I can put a price tag on you. That was a colonizer's mindset. It was your great-grandmother who said it was wrong. Who said it's all precious, it's all sacred. And now the colonizer scientists have to come back and say, well, now that we're looking at the numbers, now we're looking at the data, it turns out your great-grandmother was preaching a kind of high ecological scientific genius and wisdom that their scientists now have to bow down to, that you'll say environmentalism is white. How colonized are we that we don't recognize the genius of our great-grandmothers coming back into the earth? That's the insanity of us saying that this is not our stuff. It's our children who are dying. It's our children whose health and mental well-being is being impacted by all this poison, pollution, toxins, asthma, and everything else. But it's still a white issue. No. In those three challenges, criminal justice, economic justice, and environmental justice is a pathway back for this movement that we've been building this many years. We can't just have a political strategy. When we had a political strategy, even when we won, we lost. You have to have an economic strategy. So now, where are those opportunities? They are in finance, they are in technology, they are in media, and they are in ecological solutions. The next millionaires, multimillionaires, and billionaires are walking around today broke. You say, well, Van, I know you're with Yes We Code, you want our kids to go to Silicon Valley, but our kids don't know how to code. Van, I know you're with Green for All, you want our kids to be involved in the solar industry, putting up solar panels and doing organic gardening and all this kind of stuff, but our kids don't know anything about that. Well, that's true. But white kids don't know nothing about anything. 95, 96, 97% of all people don't understand these new technologies. So that's a huge advantage. There's an opportunity for a leapfrog economics. Just like in Africa, they're not putting up telephone poles in Africa because they got cell phones. What do they need a telephone pole for? They skipped the whole phase. We have the opportunity, and then I'll move to my close, but we have an opportunity through an organization like this, with some of the best people, some of the smartest people, some of the most dedicated people in the country, of any color, the most determined people of any color, in one organization, to start changing what we aim for. We have to expand our hustle. We have too many of our best kids saying that they want to become lawyers. And I'm a lawyer, I'm proud of that. But how many more lawyers do we need? The white kids say, I'm going to start a business and hire a lawyer. How many more not-for-profit heads do we need? How many more people who want to be President of the United States do we need? We have to expand our hustle now. Athletes, rappers. Yeah, you can go through the whole list. Exactly. Athletes, rappers, and how many more of those do we need? We're wasting genius. We're wasting genius because middle-class black folk are scared to tell their kids to go where the money is. Middle-class black people are scared to tell their kids to go and compete. We broke down walls. We were the first ones to do everything, and now we don't want our kids to go be the first ones to do nothing because we're scared they can't handle it. They can handle it. Send them to Wall Street. Send them to Silicone Valley. Send them to go be meet the older. They can handle it. In closing, I just want to say I'm a 9th generation American. I'm a 9th generation American. But I'm the first one in my family that was born with all my rights recognized by this government. Wow. I'm a 9th generation American. My cousin Kenya was born in '65 before Johnson signed the last act. I'm the first one in my family born with all my rights recognized by this government. Don't forget that. People act like this was 1,000 years ago. My mother and my father were born under segregation. My mother and my father were married under segregation. My cousins were born under segregation. Now, I'm not young, but I'm not old. I ain't that old. If you can just remember, some of you were there, but most of us were not, what it must have looked like in '68. Where you barely had a black mayor anywhere in the country. Barely had a black city council person, even in great cities. To be able to project forward to a place where within 40 years you'd have a black president. The courage that took. That's the courage that's going to take now to conquer these other mountains. But it's in expanding where we think we can show black excellence. Expanding the struggle to say, no, no, no. If there's going to be solar billionaires, some of them got to be black women. Right. I'm sorry. The sun shines on everybody. Environmental justice is not just equal protection from the bad stuff. It's not just equal protection from the poison and the pollution, it's equal opportunity to the good stuff. You got new products, new technologies, new services, new contracts. We want some of those. That's justice. And so, it's an honor for me to be here. I wish my father had lived to see President Obama. He died that spring. But the last thing that would make him smile, two things. One is seeing his grandson, at that time only 3 years old. I could bring him into that ICU and my dad would see his grandson and he would smile. And the other thing is he'd look up and he would see Barack Obama. And he would look up, he'd give me a thumb, hidden lung cancer, emphysema, too much smoking, hard worker, hard smoker, hard drinker. He had to intubate him, he couldn't talk. But you see Obama, you point to him, you give him the thumbs up. And my uncle said, well, he ain't gonna make it. Yes, he is. So, when we point to our kids and say, go on, take over Silicon Valley and show them what it's really about. Take over all these instruments of power. And they say, well, I don't know if these kids can do it. You know, they got bad, blah, 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 blah. Yes, they is. Thank you very much.
Y'all was sleeping on the road, nigga. Y'all bitches fuck with some busters, it's like they ride diggers. A million bags, rap city, you can find niggas. Bagging 50s and dime figures, my niggas. If Briz say it's a problem, then we gon' find niggas. Speed trapping in VA like your boy find niggas. I line niggas, line fiends in live districts. Give them a credit line, recoup like I sign niggas. All my wrists is frogs, all my